Hey guys, welcome to today's video. We're going to be going over the Chicago Bears offense and what it's going to look like in 2021. Before we get started though, please drop a quick like and a sub on today's video. It would really help my channel grow. And with that said, I hope you enjoyed the video and let's dive right into it. So before we get started talking about the Chicago Bears offense next season and what to expect from them, let's talk about what they did last year. And these are kind of the big numbers here. We look at the passing yards, 2,000 yards led the team for Mitch Trubisky. We did see Nick Foles too, right? So both those quarterbacks got some playing time. But Dave Montgomery, a 1,000-yard rusher, really closed that out at the end of the season, really showed up and was helpful for them. And then, receiving yards wise, Allen Robinson with just shy of 1,300 yards had a really solid year. Also had a few touchdown grabs, 6 touchdown grabs. So overall, really good year for Allen Robinson too. But where did they rank among the NFL in 2020? So if this computer ever wants to load, which it's sometimes a little bit questionable here, but team offense wise, they ranked 23rd in total offense. So that's just total points. I believe that's the metric there. Passing offense wise, they weren't exactly that much better. 22nd in passing offense, so pretty much a struggle for them throwing the football. And then running the ball, they were a little bit better because of actually no, they weren't much better. I thought they would be better because of their ability to run the football with Dave Montgomery, but only 1,600 rushing yards for the entire year, so pretty tough for them. But now though, let's talk about what this team is going to look like next season. So for starters, we got to talk about the quarterback situation. And the quarterback situation is really interesting because it's Andy Dalton, it's Justin Fields, and it's Nick Foles as the 3 quarterbacks. And all 3 of these quarterbacks have the ability to play in the NFL. Like they do. Obviously, Justin Fields was drafted in the first round. Andy Dalton has been a long-term NFL starter. Started some games for the Cowboys last year after Dak Prescott went down with injury. But Dalton was signed to be the starter. That was the idea. And I think that Dalton will start some games, but I don't think he's starting more than 2 or 3 games before Justin Fields is going to take over. So what does Andy Dalton bring to the table, I guess, in those first few games? Like what is Andy Dalton? What's he going to bring to the table? And if we look at Andy Dalton for a sec, if this computer ever wants to load once again, the numbers last year were actually pretty solid for him in terms of compared to he was solid. 2,000 yards, 14 touchdowns, 8 interceptions as a backup quarterback for the Cowboys. Played in some games, and he was injured too for a little bit. Remember, Ben DiNucci got some playing time for the Cowboys too. So overall, Dalton did the job though. He got the job done, and although the Cowboys didn't end up making the playoffs, he was in there and he didn't look absolutely awful. So he's still playable at this point in his career, and he can still get some things done. But at the end of the day, it's going to be the Justin Fields show at some point this season. It's just, when does that happen? Fields, coming out of the first round at Ohio State, is one of the most polarizing prospects of the past few years. I mean, what he's able to do with the ball in his hands, either running it or throwing it, he was just so dynamic and dominant at Ohio State. And I know Ohio State doesn't have a really good history with quarterbacks. But nonetheless, I still think Fields is going to find success in the NFL, and I think he could really help turn around this Bears franchise. Does he get that done in year 1? I don't know. I don't really know if he is quite the offensive line or some of the weapons to get the job done, but definitely he's got a high-end running back and he's got a high-end receiver. It's more just behind that, how good can this team really be? So with that said, I mean, I think Justin Fields will take over by week 2, week 3. But the thing, the real key, I think, is if Matt Nagy needs to make sure that this offense is centered around Justin Fields. You can't throw a rookie quarterback into an offense that's not centered for him. Just look at what the Miami Dolphins did last year with Tua Tagovailoa and Ryan Fitzpatrick. Tua was thrown into an offense made for Ryan Fitzpatrick. It didn't really work out too well. So this offense really needs to be constructed for Justin Fields. Matt Nagy has to make that a priority. But more importantly, I haven't liked what Matt Nagy's done over the past few years. I really think he's been a bad play caller. He's gone back to that first season with Mitch Trubisky where they did find some success. Or one of those first seasons with Mitch Trubisky where there was some success. But now it seems as if he's just going back to that, trying to recall with that, and he doesn't have enough mojo in that playbook. So I think that he really needs to work with Justin Fields and his talents, especially running the football, to really create a game plan and a playbook that really supports what Justin Fields does. Running wise, David Montgomery, Tarik Cohen, Damien Williams are a pretty interesting running back room. But let's talk about David Montgomery first. I think David Montgomery, what he's able to do last season, 1,000 rushing yards, 8 rushing touchdowns. He was absolutely phenomenal for this Bears team, and he can also catch the ball a little bit out of the backfield too. So he's not just a one-dimension horse. The truth is, though, with Tarik Cohen coming back, Tarik Cohen was injured at times last year, so that's another thing. How does he bounce back from injury in this situation? He's much more of a pass catcher, much more of a third down guy, much more of a gadget player. But he's a player that can really get the job done as a pass catcher more than a runner, although he still is able to do some things as a running back. And then, Damien Williams coming over from the Kansas City Chiefs. Obviously, the Chiefs decided to move on from him this offseason, was one of their Super Bowl heroes. He's a guy who's a good pass catcher, but can also run in between the tackles. But I think they've got a really nice mix of running backs here. They've got a true power workhorse running back that you can give the ball 18 times a game. They've got a nice third down back, pass catcher, a guy, a change of pace back in Tarik Cohen. Then they've got an all-around solid backup running back in Damien Williams. So I like this running back room. But now let's move on to the receivers. With the receivers, Allen Robinson is one of the premier receivers in today's game. He's arguably a top 10 receiver in today's NFL. He had 102 catches last year for 1,250 yards and 6 touchdowns. 6th in receptions last year, 9th in total yards, and tied for 29th in touchdowns. So he was really good. The only thing that I would say with Allen Robinson is injuries have been a concern, at times in his career, but he's shown time and time again that he can bounce back from injury, be a plug-and-play premier wide receiver, a guy who can go up and catch the football. But it's really more, do they have guys around Allen Robinson? One of the guys that they do have around Allen Robinson is Darnell Mooney, who actually was pretty solid last year, showed off his speed at 5'11", 177 pounds, 61 catches for 630 yards and 4 receiving touchdowns. Really helped spread the field out a little bit, but also just his route running underneath really helped too. He was a guy that really stepped up for that Bears team. And then you got to look at Anthony Miller, who has been a disappointment of late. He really has. He has not been what they thought that he would be, coming out of the draft. But he's shown sparks. He's got good speed. And more importantly, I think it's really on Darnell Mooney and Allen Robinson. Damiere Byrd was good for the Patriots last year, but I don't know how much success he's going to have with his Bears team. Marquise Goodwin, another guy who's kind of fast, can spread out the field, but there's not a lot of depth at this wide receiver position for this Bears team. So that kind of concerns me in that regard. I just think that, Allen Robinson, really solid receiver. Darnell Mooney really showed up. Anthony Miller is fine as a receiver 3, but after that, I don't love the depth that they have past that. They've got Robinson, who top 10 receiver in the league. But behind that and Mooney, I don't know how deep these receivers are. Cole Kmet, let's move to the tight ends quickly. Him and Jimmy Graham are those 2 real pass-catching tight ends for the Chicago Bears. Kmet last year, I think, didn't quite have the year that Jimmy Graham had. Jimmy Graham had a much better year. But Kmet had 28 catches for 243 yards and 2 touchdowns. But I would expect for him to have a much bigger workload this season as the Bears look to really get him more involved in the passing game coming out of the second round out of Notre Dame. They've got a good history with tight ends. So I'm not worried about Kmet. I think that we're going to see a bigger workload for him, especially with Jimmy Graham getting up there in age. Although Graham had a really good year last year, I like the 1-2 combo at tight end. Maybe that can make up for some of the lack of depth at receiver. But overall, I still think that at this point in time, the weapons passing wise are not where they need to be for this Bears team to have a ton of success. So I think that's something that the Bears look at for in the future, but it's something that Matt Nagy is going to really have to look at to how can he scheme and how can he really work guys open? How can he use the skills of his players to create a productive offense rather than just relying on individual skill. You got to work with the skills and you got to create a game plan. That's something Matt Nagy hasn't done over the past few seasons. So that's something he's got to work on. And then offensive line wise, I love the Tevin Jenkins pick at left tackle. Absolutely loved him. He could have been a first round talent. They got him in the second round. He's a plug and play starter there. He's big, really physical. He's a mauler too. So he'll really help David Montgomery in the run game. And the rest of the offensive line does concern me. Cody Whitehair, he's a solid center. There's nothing wrong with him. He's another guy that I think he's a veteran guy who's going to be solid. But when you look at left guard at James Daniels, right guard Alex Bars, and right tackle at Germain Ifedi, those guys are not really what the Bears need. The Bears have had offensive line issues for a while now, and it's stemmed from they had some questionable players like Bobby Massey playing on their offensive line, but at the end of the day, they need help on the offensive line. This offensive line is not good enough to really help this team win now. I think that the Tevin Jenkins picks definitely helps get some young talent on that team on that offense. But at the end of the day, if we look at this offense, I see some potential. I see the stars of Justin Fields and David Montgomery and Allen Robinson potentially making this offense salvageable. I mean, if Justin Fields ends up lighting the lamp and just completely going off, with David Montgomery and Allen Robinson, Darnell Mooney, I think that this offense can be a top 15 offense in the NFL. But if the quarterback play struggles, I don't think that there are enough weapons on this team to really to really salvage bad quarterback play. You're going to need good quarterback play, and you're going to need your weapons and David Montgomery and Allen Robinson to really stay healthy if you want a shot at having a really successful offense. Plus, I just don't think the offensive line is quite good enough. At least quite yet. I think Tevin Jenkins, we've never seen him play, but I like the pick a lot. I think Cody Whitehair is going to be solid. I mean, that's just the way it is. Germain Ifedi is a below average tackle, and then your guards are kind of questionable. But at the end of the day, I mean, I still think that this Bears offense needs some work. But really, Matt Nagy's on the hot seat at this point in his career, and he needs to get the job done. So if he really believes in Justin Fields, if he really believes in Andy Dalton, you're going to need great quarterback play with the below average talent I think that this Bears offense has to get the job done. But if you get that good quarterback play, I still think this can be a top 20 offense in the NFL. The offense really struggled for this Bears team last year, really kept them behind. But at the end of the day, if they get the good quarterback play, if they can get some consistent quarterback play, and maybe there's a chance for this offense to really take off. And with that said, that's pretty much going to end the video for today. Did you agree with my analysis? Why or why not? Leave your comments and thoughts in the comment section down below. I'd love to hear what you guys have to say. Also, if you're new around here, please drop a like and a sub on today's video. I'd really appreciate that. And with that said, I hope you enjoyed the video. And until next time, see ya.